What is going on, alpha males? Welcome to the Alpha Male Podcast, the podcast where we talk about what it means to be a man. We don't apologize for it. Strong, dominant, and in control, made in the very image of God. Today I'm going to talk about a subject that goes deeper, and that's being able to provide for yourself and those that depend on you, those whom you have dominion over, and the people you have a responsibility to protect, those of your household, the widow, the orphan, the stranger. Now, lots of people listening to this podcast are in America, but many are not. By God's grace, people listen to this all over the world. So I'm going to attempt to make this as inclusive as I can. Here in America, our culture, we tend to get so focused on deer hunting. Maybe elk hunting is second. And you get these guys, and I'm not putting it down, but this is a recreation, a sport. Getting in, tens of thousands of dollars side-by-side off-road vehicles and 20-pound rifles with giant spotting scopes and all this gear, and spending tens of thousands of dollars to shoot a deer or an elk. And that's fine if that's how those people want to spend that money and time. It's certainly better than sitting on the couch watching Netflix. But not really viable for putting meat on the table. It can put meat on the table, but when you look at the cost-benefit analysis, it's quite high. We are blessed to have all kinds of other things put on this earth for food for us and for other things that we can utilize. So let's not get so focused on deer hunting. I'm going to talk about different things we can hunt and different ways we can hunt today. Anyway, that's what today's topic is going to be about. So even if you live somewhere other than America, you still might find this interesting. As a lot of shows do, this came out of the Patreon chat. If you'd like to be part of that chat or just be a patron to support the podcast, I hope that you will consider it. And a very sincere and heartfelt thank you to everybody that does. I am very blessed and humbled that you listen and that some people choose to step up and support the podcast. With that, I'll plug in the bio and then we'll get into the main topic. Who am I? A question we should all ask ourselves. I am, first and foremost, a servant of God, made in His very own image, a follower of Jesus Christ, a simple man called by God to the Great Commission to share the good news of Jesus Christ. Next, a little bit about my background and what God has allowed me to do and blessed me to do in life. Grew up what most would consider very poor in the backwoods of the southeastern and mid-Atlantic United States, hunting and fishing. Joined the Marine Corps at 17. Did a couple of combat tours in Iraq. So a decorated Marine Corps combat veteran. Infantry assaultman. After the combat tours, I was an urban warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps under Mojave Viper. I also served in the U.S. Army, both full-time and part-time National Guard. Also a veteran of law enforcement. I served with LAPD. I was a sworn peace officer, a cop for LAPD. I worked regular patrol assignments and more specialized assignments. One of those more specialized assignments was warrant service, fugitive recovery. Also had some other law enforcement roles. I am an FBI certified firearms instructor and been certified by another 3-letter government agency in a lot of firearms and training things. I've also been a private contractor, worked in the private sector, pertaining to tactics and gunfighting and protecting America from enemies foreign and domestic. I served as the commander of a tactical team to stop active shooters in a large metropolitan area. That was our primary mission, to stop active shooters, which sadly are a thing in America today. I've also been blessed to do quite a bit of competition shooting. Started my first formal competitions even before joining the Marine Corps at 17. I had won more shooting competitions than I can remember. I have competed in all manner of disciplines in shooting. I've been blessed to be a state rifle and pistol champion, West Coast regional champion. Like I said, been blessed to win more shooting competitions than I can remember. Mentioned hunting. I've hunted to put meat on the table starting when I was a child. I've also been a professional big game hunter and guide, hunting and slaying all manner of beast. And I don't apologize for that. Humbled to be the host of 3 podcasts: Simple Man Sermons, Alpha Male Podcast, and Gunfighter Life. Obviously, as things not mentioned, I've been blessed to do many other things. But, again, first and foremost, I'm a servant of God, a believer and follower of the Bible, the Word, Jesus Christ. And I don't apologize for that. With that, let's transition into today's topic. Alluded to in the preamble of today's episode, here in America, we're very much about deer and deer hunting, and I love deer hunting. I've taken more deer than I can remember. I've hunted whitetail on the East Coast and mule deer on the West Coast and elk. I've even been blessed to professionally hunt and guide for exotic animals and deer species, fallow, axis, even bison. How many people in today's day and age can say they were a professional buffalo hunter? So I've been very blessed. But there's a lot more out there than just the big game. And in fact, if you are wanting to get into hunting, I suggest not starting with deer. I repeat, if you want to get into hunting, I suggest not starting with deer. It has a much harder barrier to entry. A lot of people want to hunt deer. There's money in it, so it might be hard to get access to hunt deer, especially if you live somewhere east of the Mississippi, or probably even more so in Europe. Those things are money-making machines now. People make a lot of money on deer leases and things like that. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm saying probably not the best place to start. Also, you could spend your whole year waiting for a couple of weeks, maybe in some places a couple of days, of regular deer season. There's a lot of other species that you can hunt way longer and way more of. And if your goal is fieldcraft, being able to stalk up on animals, understanding nature, reading landscape, the art of camouflage and deception, and the use of concealment, all those things, instead of just doing that for a couple of days or a couple of weeks once a year, you could do it a giant chunk of the year. Which one do you think is going to make you a better outdoorsman, a better scout, a better well-rounded man with the ability to provide and protect those you love? Think about that. Even if you can and you do hunt deer, I hope that's not all that you hunt, because there's a lot bigger world out there of hunting than just deer. So that's what we're going to talk about today, not deer. I also want to mention not always guns. I love guns. I do a whole other podcast called Gunfighter Life. In fact, I was debating on which podcast to put this episode on. Do a whole nother one on Gunfighter Life. By God's grace, I've been a professional gunfighter, made my way in this world as an adult male with a Bible and a gun for a big chunk of my life. I really enjoy guns, but guns are not the only thing out there. And for some people that live in some places where they're of self-protection, self-preservation, and self-sufficiency has been severely restricted or taken away altogether, that might not be a good option for them if they live in California or New Jersey or Europe. So I probably will mention guns in this podcast, but there's archery. I love archery. I was just reminiscing the other day with the Patreon chat. I posted a picture of the first bear I took with a bow. I think I was 16. I may have been 15 or 17, but somewhere in that age I took my first bear with a bow. I really like archery. I really do. There's a beauty and an art in archery. And that's a viable option for most people in most places. Again, you don't have to hunt big game with archery. You can get judo points, you can get field points, you can get blunt tips, and hunt a lot of these other animals I'm going to talk about today. Likewise, crossbows and air rifles. I have done a lot of air rifle, both practice and I can't recall the number of things I've killed with an air rifle. There are a lot more effective and efficient air rifles today than there were when I was doing it. I don't even own an air rifle anymore, sadly, because I have a ton of other guns, and I try to avoid places that restrict my rights to have those guns. But air rifles are a viable option. And if I lived in what I refer to as a people hive, a suburb or something like that, it would be a decent option for hunting. I've also successfully hunted with a blowgun, believe it or not. I've also actually successfully hunted with a rock, believe it or not. So don't think that if you can't have a gun or don't have a gun or are unwilling to own a gun for whatever reason that you can't glean from this episode and you can't provide and protect. You certainly can. Now let's talk about why we hunt. The main reason is to put meat on the table. That's the main reason I hunt. A lot of people's main reason is for sport. I hunt to put meat on the table. That's why I have a hard time buying out-of-state hunting licenses where it's thousands of dollars to shoot a deer. And I've shot plenty of deer, so for me to justify that when I could buy filet mignon for that price. But that's the main reason I like to hunt. That's how I grew up hunting. That was the mentality. You hunt to put meat on the table. So that's numero uno for me. Probably second is the ability to be proficient with a weapon. We think today of hunting and tactical stuff as the two completely different worlds, but many of the great warriors, whether individually or culturally in history, were also great hunters. Theodore Roosevelt, George Washington, great tacticians, at least in my opinion, also very avid hunters. I believe. You check into that for yourself. Obviously, I wasn't there. I didn't meet George Washington or Theodore Roosevelt or the Red Baron or Carlos Hathcock, but I do believe they all were hunters as well. Also, culturally, the Romans really respected hunting, the Greeks, the Spartans, the Mongols. You get my point, right? I could go on and on, but all these cultures respected hunting, and they also respected the warrior culture. Only today do we draw this really distinct line. But it does help you be proficient with a weapon. I remember I was blessed to take my wife hunting a couple of times so far, hopefully more in the future, but I took her on our first big game hunt for Texas doll sheep. And she had trouble because she had only ever shot on paper. She owned guns before I met her, but she had trouble because she had never shot anything alive. And she was expecting it to stand still like a piece of paper, and it just wouldn't be still. And that was a struggle for her. It's a learning curve, and it'll be a learning curve for you too. Also, there's a lot of other skills that go in with hunting that will make you better as a man, even if it's not to put meat on the table. Fieldcraft, I mentioned. There's a lot that goes into fieldcraft. Some other things I didn't mention in the beginning are the ability to butcher game. That's a great skill in and of itself. The ability to track. If you become a successful hunter, especially the way that I like to hunt, I don't like to sit over a corn feeder, in a deer stand. That's not my style. If you want to do that, that's fine. But if you spot and stalk hunt or still hunt the way that I prefer to, tracking will very much be in there. Also, tracking an already wounded animal, following a blood trail. That's another skill. There's a ton of skills in that fieldcraft arena that you will glean, and as they say in the tactical world, tools in your toolbox to be a well-rounded man. Another one that's probably sadly lacking in a lot of people's lives today is just being outside in a natural environment. You, alpha male, were not designed to live in a cube. You're not designed to watch Netflix in a cube and then get in a tiny mobile cube and then drive to a cubicle and spend your day in a cube and then go buy stuff in another cube and go sleep in a cube after you watch Netflix in a cube. You were meant for wide open spaces. You were meant for nature. God made man and he put him where? In a garden. Just being in nature. There's plenty of times where I'll go hunting and I can kill something. And totally legal, totally ethical, and I just won't. Just because I just want to be outside. There's nothing wrong with that. Just being outside in and of itself is a great thing from hunting. Also, you may decide, okay, there, Michael, you've convinced me that all this stuff is important, but I don't want to kill an animal. I know that there may come a time where I have to put food on the table, but for now, I just want to go to Walmart and buy my rotisserie chicken, or like I do. The most common alpha male dinner for me is 10 eggs. Don't worry, I don't eat all those. My wife gets one. But I just want to do that. I don't want to actually kill anything, but I want the skill. I want that, as I said before, that tool in my toolbox. I want to be able to do these things. Well, you can hunt, I would submit. You might call it something else, but you can hunt without killing for now. And if you decide that you ever have to, you can get over the mental hurdle of that, because killing something is not easy, especially the first time you do it. And I don't take the shedding of blood lightly. But you say, I want to know how to do it. Well, you could do it, let's say, with a camera, with a laser rangefinder. You could say, you know what, this is the kind of weapon that I have, and I'm going to practice on paper, and I know that I am proficient with this weapon out to 25 yards. And I'm just picking a distance. I have no idea what weapon or what game you're talking about. But let's just say, let's just make something up. I want to be able to hunt Eurasian collared doves, and I know that with my air rifle I can reasonably take those at 25 meters. Right? So you practice this fieldcraft walking around in the woods and getting within 25 meters of Eurasian collared doves. Even if you never shoot one, it's going to give you a giant leg up if you ever have to hunt them for food. Another reason you might hunt, aside from what we've talked about, is helping the environment. Yes, hunting to help the environment. I can't speak for other places in the world, but I'm sure there are. But here in America, we have a lot of invasive species, or species that need population control. I mentioned a Eurasian collared dove. Eurasian collared dove are not native to America, and they compete with the native mourning dove. And in a lot of places, they're considered something that needs to be taken out. So they're an invasive species a lot of places without any limits or restrictions, that also happen to be delicious. So you're helping out the environment and you're putting meat on the table. But there is a place for just killing things to help the environment. A classic example of that out west is the prairie dog. Prairie dogs, although they might look cool on TV and look cute, they are quite nasty animals and they carry the bubonic plague. Also, if you like to eat beef, they can wreak havoc on a cattle rancher's ranch. And a lot of places will issue what's called damage stamps for those. And you can go kill a lot of prairie dogs if you're proficient and help out a rancher. And help knock back nasty diseases that those vermin carry. So there's a lot of reasons you might want to hunt other than for sport. Not saying hunting is not fun, that I don't enjoy it. I greatly enjoy hunting. Something deeply primal and satisfying about going out as a man and coming back with meat for myself and those under my dominion, whom I am blessed to steward and be able to provide for. And that's a lot, I realize. I didn't realize I rambled on for so long about that. I didn't realize I had to have so much to say about this. I'm going to start hunting east of the Mississippi. Although I really prefer western hunting and being out west, I know that the majority of my listeners live east of the Mississippi because the vast majority of hunters in this country live east of the Mississippi. It's got a way higher population density even though it's a smaller area. A lot of those will go crazy for whitetail and maybe turkey. But there's a lot of other things you can hunt. The one that started off this discussion in the Patreon chat, snow geese. Now, I don't recommend most waterfowl hunting because it's got so many crazy regulations. And not only do you have to buy a state hunting license, but you have to buy a federal hunting license. And you can't use normal shot, you got to use steel shot. And you got to be able to tell what this duck is flying through the air. If you shoot the wrong one, it's illegal. So I would stay away from most waterfowl hunting for the newbie unless you have somebody to really show you the ropes. Snow geese is an exception. You really don't confuse snow geese for anything else. They're big and white and black. A big, giant, flying protein ball of delicious meat covered in white and black feathers. A lot of places get rid of a ton of the restrictions you normally have on waterfowl hunting. for snow geese. They're biologists, and I don't pretend to be one, think that in some biomes and some habitats there are far too many snow geese. And so they either have a very generous limit or no limit at all. And they are delicious if you know how to cook them. That's pretty much with anything. You can get a good cut of steak and somebody can overcook it and make it taste like shoe leather. But if you know what you're doing, snow geese can be quite good. And a snow goose is a big animal. People think, again, whitetail, whitetail, whitetail. Let's just say a generous limit of 15 snow geese. You know, in less than 2 days, if you get your limit, that's more meat than you're probably going to get off a whitetail. So maybe look at snow goose hunting if you've never done it. You're still probably going to have to use steel shot, which whatever that is, what it is. But you could start out, you could go to Walmart, an indicator perhaps on if you live in the right area or not, if there is a Walmart, does that Walmart sell guns? But if the Walmart or another big box store does sell guns, you can generally get a single shot 12 gauge or 20 gauge shotgun for under $150. And you can get several boxes of shells. And that's a way, even today with all this sport hunting, that you can pay for that stuff with that amount of meat. Even if you compare it with something like premium organic chicken or premium organic duck or goose. Price that out in the store and then go see how many of those you can kill in the season, which will be a lot if you get the hang of it. And a lot of times if you see snow geese, you might see Canadian geese. And Canadian geese in general don't have as big a limit, but if you get, I'm just throwing out numbers here, 10 snow geese and you get 5 Canadian geese, that's a lot of delicious meat. So I looked up just for Florida, because that's a destination I'm looking to go to soon, and 15 a day. And that's coincidentally just a number that I picked at random. Maybe I remember that from when I was younger. There might even be some states without any limit. But 15 geese a day, if you manage to shoot that many, that's a lot of meat. A goose is a big animal, at least as far as waterfowl go. Sticking on that topic and thinking outside the box, I mentioned Eurasian collared doves. A lot of places, they have a lot of regulation on mourning dove, which is our indigenous native species. There's a Eurasian collared dove that's a little bit bigger, and as far as you're concerned, taxonomically and putting food on the table is even better because it's a little bit bigger. It's easy to identify because it has a collar. It's got a black collar, and it doesn't have a lot of the regulations and seasons. So you can go out and harvest a lot of Eurasian collared doves. Again, a lot of places may have no limit at all and no season. So you could literally go out, instead of once or twice a year, every weekend, if you work a Monday through Friday job, you could go out every weekend and kill Eurasian collared doves. Again, if there's no regulations, you could probably thaw out some birdseed and bait them. They are a delicious invasive species, a lot of times with very little or no limitations. Not only are you getting delicious, totally organic, free-range, all the buzzwords meat, you're also helping out the environment and helping out the native mourning dove because they compete with the mourning dove. On that, there is another bird called a starling. It is from Eurasia. It's a Eurasian starling. It's also an invasive species. You may think of it as like a crow. It is not a crow. It is a black bird, so a lot of people might think of it as a crow, but taxonomically, it is not a corvid. A corvid is that crow species, crows, ravens. It's not a corvid. It doesn't have the same diet. It doesn't have the same taxonomy. It's its own thing. It's a small blackbird. You may recognize them. They kind of look like a blackbird that's been dipped in oil because they have kind of a shiny sheen, like that oil sheen on water, purpley red kind of color to their feathers. Anyway, they're an invasive species. In most places, no regulations. Have fun, knock yourself out. And I should caveat this, some places may have regulations on all this stuff, so check your regulations. Don't get arrested over a starling. And my experience, game wardens, well, I won't talk about my experiences, but just be careful of the law. Now let's talk about a classic one. Squirrel and rabbit. Now when I grew up, this was a staple. My father raised rabbit dogs. And I grew up hunting squirrel. That's gray squirrel. Now, I don't consider things that go forth on paws to be food. When I was younger, I ate it because that's just what we did. I don't consider them food anymore, but you know what I do consider them? Fine dog food. And if I can supplement and save money by feeding my dog that good free-range organic meat, and I have a Rhodesian Ridgeback named Alexander Hamilton. One of the reasons I chose that dog breed, brief aside, is that it's one of the very few breeds that is good for both guarding and hunting. Most dogs that will do one will not do the other, like a German Shepherd. It's a great shepherd, it's a decent guard dog, it is not a good hunting dog. You're probably not teaching your German Shepherd to point grouse or to tree bear, which is what Alexander Hamilton likes to do. What was I talking about? Oh, rabbits and squirrels. I encourage my dogs to forage and get their own food when they can. They're through scavenging. He's a dog, right? So if he can get some good free meat, I'm all about it. But I do consider squirrels and rabbits quite fun to hunt and really good dog food. So if you want to get into hunting, and you want to get into hunting mammals, as opposed to starting out with the birds we talked about, rabbits and gray squirrels. Now, a lot of those do have some kind of season, but it's generally a lot more liberal and a lot longer than deer season. Also, things we don't think about but ground squirrels. I mentioned prairie dogs, but also whatever you want to call them in whatever part of the U.S. you are in, marmots, rock chucks, woodchucks. Think of these as like a giant squirrel that lives on the ground and subterraneously with a very short tail. A lot of times these are a nuisance for farmers and gardeners and things like that, so again, helping out the environment and maybe feeding your dog. Those things can have quite a bit of meat on them. There's an invasive species kind of unique to the very southeastern U.S., which is nutria rat. They're like a big giant aquatic rat. Not only are they legal to hunt, I don't know of anywhere that has a restriction on these invasive species, but some places I do believe, I haven't lived in these places historically, but some places will even pay you a bounty. That's right, they will pay you to go hunt. Now with gas prices they are today, unless they're just in your backyard, you might break even, but if you're going to go out and hunt something anyway, you might as well get the bounty for it. But nutria rat. Now Florida has quite a few invasive species like python and iguana, which I'm not going to spend too much time on because they're very unique to people in Florida, and a lot of people listening to this aren't going to be in Florida, but they exist. You can go hunt them. Now another thing we haven't talked about yet is coyote. Coyotes, depending on how you pronounce it on your vernacular where you're from in the U.S., but I call them coyotes. These used to be just in the western U.S. In fact, I'm looking at a copy, not the same copy I had when I was a kid, but a copy of a book I had when I was a kid, and it shows the coyote range I think west of the Mississippi River. Nowadays, I believe you can find coyotes in pretty much every state in the U.S. So I don't ever remember seeing or hearing about coyote in my old stomping grounds where I grew up, Virginia, Maryland, the Mid-Atlantic. But they are there now, I do believe. Anyway, coyotes, a lot of times. A lot of places have no limit on them. They may have restrictions on how you can hunt them, but a lot of places will even let you hunt at night if that's a skill that you want to have. Talked about this for fieldcraft. Well, that's one of the species you could legally hunt at night. In fact, a lot of times it's easier to hunt them at night because they are more active at night, depending on climate and time of year and all that other stuff, which is something you really got to figure out for yourself. But coyote, that's something, again, you could probably hunt in just about all 50 states. I would be surprised if there was a state in the U.S. that didn't have coyotes now. Probably, now that I think about it, maybe Hawaii doesn't have coyotes, right? But you get the idea. I think Hawaii has quite a few other cool species that you can hunt that are considered invasive. Now let's talk about, going back to birds, we talked about waterfowl. Let's talk about upland game birds. The delicious little protein balls. Beautiful, delicious little organic protein balls. But it's going to give you a lot more to hunt than just deer and elk. Turkey used to be a thing to hunt pretty regular, but it seems like they've gotten so specialized and it's like this trophy thing. When I was a professional guide, some people would pay more to hunt a turkey than they would an exotic animal, which blew my mind. Because everybody wants what's the trendy thing to shoot. To be when I was a boy, we'd just go out, it was Thanksgiving time, go out and shoot a turkey. Now it's all kinds of regulations and this thing and that thing. So those are heavily regulated like deer, so I wouldn't recommend them for a new hunter. They're not hard to hunt if you are hunting them for food. Just go find where they're roosting at and shoot them out of a tree. Now that's highly illegal, and if you're starving to death, then you just render unto Caesar, I guess. but you can't actually hunt them that way nowadays. They're heavily regulated. So I would stay away from those for the new hunter or for somebody that actually wants to hunt for food. There is a lot of grouse species, ruffed grouse, sage grouse. They have different varying levels of regulation depending on your area, but they are quite delicious. Think of them like a big wild chicken. And waterfowl, again, I would stay away from that because it's so heavily regulated, except for the snow geese we talked about. A bird that I liked hunting growing up that a lot of people don't think about is snipe. Snipe is a small game bird. They have a really long bill. Anyway, the term sniper, as I understand it, actually comes from people that had the ability to shoot snipe out of the air. They're a small, fast little animal, and they're like thick, dense woodland, so you don't have a lot of time to get a shot. Very different from what our modern snipers do, but I do believe that is where the term hails from. Kind of a cool, quick note there. But snipe is a bird in the eastern U.S. that a lot of people don't even think about hunting. Similar to that are woodcock. Now let's talk about your medium small game, I'll call it predatory animals. Your coon, your raccoon that is, your raccoon, your possum, and your various species of fox. Red fox, gray fox, for people like in Alaska, Arctic fox. But for most people that's red and gray fox. The cool thing about these is, if you want to be able to hunt with a dog, a lot of these species allow you to be able to hunt with a dog. Hunting with a dog is awesome. You know, that's going back to our ancestry, right? That's one of the main reasons we domesticated dogs. We could use them to kill things and hunt. If you've ever hunted with dogs, it is an amazing thing. Hunting rabbits with dogs, hunting. One of my good friends growing up raised black and tan coon hounds, running after coons in the swamp and in the forest at night with a lantern and a rifle or a shotgun, chasing after a bunch of coons, having a just explosion of noise in the woods with, you know, coon dogs going off everywhere. What a ton of fun. What a great cultural thing. It's kind of dying. But hunting with dogs is a wonderful thing. I have never hunted what used to be a big thing here in America. George Washington, right? He pioneered the American foxhound. I would love to hunt fox on horseback with dogs. That would be awesome. Never done it, but a lot of those species, if you do want to learn to hunt with dogs, you can do that. Transitioning to out west, because there are some people that listen that live out west, right? You have things like badger. We mentioned prairie dogs, marmots, pheasants. Something they're actually not a native species. They came from China, but we like them so much we don't really treat them like most other invasive species. In fact, we try and protect them and grow their population. Just because they're pretty and we like them more than, say, a Eurasian collared dove. But they are actually from China, but they are heavily regulated. Not as heavy as like a waterfowl, and there's really nothing else that looks like a flying pheasant. They have that long, beautiful tail, and think of them like a wild organic chicken. They are quite tasty. Also a big one, you know, in the south and in the west. You think of these primarily in like Texas, but they're in a lot of other states. Feral hogs are domestic species brought here by the Spanish. They got loose and they can wreak havoc on an environment. If you want to go eradicate some feral hog, that's a thing that might be open to you. Another one out west is jackrabbit. And although they're a native species, nobody seems to really have much love for the jackrabbit. And there's plenty of them, so a lot of places have no regulation on them. Some places you don't even need a hunting license. Like I checked because it may have changed, right? But I do believe like Nevada doesn't even require a hunting license for coyote and jackrabbit. Talk about little regulation, right? Try getting a deer tag in Nevada. You can go out and hunt coyotes and jackrabbit unless it's changed, I do believe, all year without a license. In fact, I did an entire episode on the last great safari, affordable to the common, let's say, blue-collared American, and even international if you want to. But going west and hunting, and again, you know, getting an elk tag for like New Mexico could cost tens of thousands of dollars and years of waiting. But some places like Oregon, you can go and hunt bear, which I like to hunt bear. Even out of state, I think a hunting license is $100 and something, and a bear tag is like $17 for out of state. So you could spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to hunt an elk, or you could spend under $200 and go hunt a bear. Not everything has to have antlers to be worthy of hunting, right? Now, a lot of Texas is private land, but if you could find some public land to hunt pigs on, Might be an opportunity there. Again, if you grew up like I did, a poor boy in the South, I hunted deer too, but if you want to put meat in the freezer, go get some snow geese. There's a lot of meat on snow geese, especially if you get a lot of them. They can add up to more than a deer real quick. I talked about a dying art, hunting with dogs. You may be able to find a hound hunting group in your area and literally just ask them, hey, can I go out with you? I don't even want to shoot anything. I just want to see what it's like to hunt with dogs. A lot of those old-timers, as we respectfully refer to them, would probably like nothing more than to take a young man out hunting, or a younger man out hunting. I don't know how old you are listening to this, but love to pass that on and show that. Again, hound hunting, maybe because it's not culturally popular or whatever, but that's kind of a dying art. That's a fun thing to do. It's a great thing. And again, talking about that primitive skill, hunting with dogs is something that goes back for who knows how long. And it's a totally different style of hunting. If you think, I don't like hunting because the one time I did, I sat on my butt in a deer stand and was cold, I would say I don't like that kind of hunting either. But I certainly like running through the swamp after dogs with a animal stuck in a tree. That's a lot of fun. Or I like a beautiful sunny day just outside of Sedona, Arizona, hunting Eurasian collared doves with the sun on my back. It's a great day. So maybe think about that a different way. Think about, if you want to get into hunting, there's a lot bigger world out there than just hunting whitetail or just hunting whitetail and mule deer and elk. I love those things. I love hunting elk. And that's a lot of meat. But there's a lot of other stuff you can hunt too. Thanks for listening to this episode. Thank you sincerely for your time. I am humbled that you guys give me your time. And I really do appreciate that. If you want to help out, if you haven't already, scroll down and hit some stars, leave a review. If you really want to support the podcast, and by that I humbly mean consider supporting me. I left a good time salary management position to do this full time. I'm humbled by all the support that I get. If you want to step up with the support and you want this kind of stuff to continue, I hope you'll consider becoming a patron. Patrons get a lot of cool insider stuff. At least I hope they think it's cool. They get to talk with me and ask all kinds of questions, and more importantly, I get to be a part of their chat and we help each other. Iron sharpens iron. They get a lot of content early and commercial free, but mostly I hope you'll consider just wanting to be a contributing member of the tribe. And thanks for listening to all that, and I'll throw out a tactical tip of the day. A lot of people like to hunt and they like to get their fancy rifle and they like to shoot off a bench and shoot really small groups. And there's nothing wrong with that. I like shooting a really small group off a bench too. But probably more practically for hunting, take your hunting gun. I would suggest starting with a shotgun or a .22 for a lot of the species we talked about today, if it's legal. But find a good piece of terrain where it's safe to shoot in multiple directions, like a ditch if you're in the south, or a gulch if you're out west. It's funny how our vernacular vocabulary changes from different regions, isn't it? Maybe an old gravel pit if you're up in Maine. Wherever you are, find a place where you can safely shoot in more than just directly one line. And go get a case of those sporting clays. I don't know what they are now with inflation, but I remember them being like less than $10 for quite a few. Sporting clays, probably enough to do this several times. This is fun to do with friends too, but you can do it by yourself with friends. Take out those sporting clays and set them in different configurations and different distances. Try and set them up if you can in ways where you have to shoot some kneeling, or just tell yourself or write a note on the ground with whatever kind of marker you want. This one gets shot from kneeling, this one gets shot from prone, this one gets shot resting on this log. You get the idea, and you set those up at whatever realistic game distances are for you, 25, 50, 75, 100, 150 yards, and see what distances you can realistically and reliably take out that target. And that should give you a better understanding of your actual capabilities of shooting game. Now, shooting game is different, as I alluded to with my wife in the beginning. Now, you can throw these yourself or have a buddy throw them for you and shoot them out of the air. That's a different skill, more analogous to bird hunting, and that's fun to do as well. Little hand throwers are usually pretty cheap, again, probably under $10. You can set up this quasi kind of course, and it'll give you experience shooting in different positions other than just on a bench, offhand, standing, kneeling, sitting, prone, from a log, from your backpack. And it'll to give you a realistic idea in your head of how far something can be away and you should take a shot at it. If you're kneeling in that course and it takes you 5 shots to shoot that clay, that's probably not a shot you want to take in the field. Again, I have respect for the lifeblood of an animal, and I don't want it to suffer any more than is necessary to put food on the table. Hopefully I don't want it to suffer at all. That should give you a realistic idea. If you can drop in the prone at that distance and get that clay 9 out of 10 times, because nothing's 100%, right? And the best shooter can have an off day. But that might be a shot you're willing to take, but you would know that because you had practiced it. Anyway, that's a tactical tip of the day, setting up courses with those, sporting clay targets. You can also do it with just regular soda cans, pop cans if you're from wherever they say pop, I think like the Midwest. I'm not sure, not from there. Just make sure you pick it up, don't leave your trash when you're done, but you want to shoot, soda cans. A similar thing, just save it up. If you drink soda, save up the empty cans. You can do a similar thing with it. Even setting some on their side, you can just see the bottom of it to make the target smaller. Anyway, a fun thing to do and a cool tactical tip. With that, the tactical verse of the day. This is coming at you from Proverbs. The 12th proverb. The lazy man does not roast any game, but the diligent feed on the riches of the hunt. With that, men, thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.